All right. Hello. My name's Trey. I did audio rework on Twitter, which was a year of audio redesigns. I did one every day for a year, short clip. This is one of my favorite ones that I would like to break down for you today. It is 20 seconds of Animal Well, made by Billy Basso, published by Big Mode Games. One of my favorite Metroidvanias of the year. Absolutely incredible game. If you have not played it, go play it. This clip does not spoil any major ideas, mechanics, locations, anything like that. This is pretty much the second screen you see in the game after you start a new game. It's very, very early on. I'm going to play the clip once in its entirety and then talk a little bit about what I did, choices I made, the width, some ideas I did. So here's the clip. Great. So the first thing I want to talk about is the ambience in general is kind of divided twofold. So one is I've got these couple tracks here that are full stereo. And I kind of thought of this as like the greater well around you. So kind of the implied size of how big the world is outside of this screen. Everything else that you see has this kind of maroon envelope on it. That's all width limiting. So all of that stuff is held to 60% in front of you, meaning it's not full stereo. You're still getting some in both headphones, but it does feel kind of tighter, more limited. So I kind of wanted that to more indicate the screen in front of you rather than the greater world around you, like the other ones do. This one and this one are both waterfalls that are panned to this room and not this room, so they stop. And I did keep that reverb. There was an initial cut of this where I had the reverb stop when the room transitioned. But when I went back and played the game, there is kind of this cohesive feeling you get when you transition from room to room, and you can still hear the previous room for a little bit. So ultimately I decided to keep that. I think that's a cool trick. I'm sure I didn't come up with this, but I thought it was neat to kind of have what you're looking at be a little bit thinner than what everything else that's happening around you, because also these stay the same. You can see these four tracks are consistent throughout both rooms. But these tracks, however, I splice in new room tone and ambience. So they are sound different. It's very jarring. It's very exact. This, I think I zoomed all the way into like sample level and cut right at the frame where it transitions, because I did want it to be very precise when you change locations, because it feels like a small thing, but that's a very easy trick to prove like this room was already here before your player interact with it. It's already there. There's a nice little whale call. Thought that was fun. I liked the idea of that being maybe there's something larger out there moving around outside of you, totally unrelated to you, bigger than you, scary than you. In this game, you do not have weapons, attacks of any kind. So it's mostly about outthinking your opponents and running away from them. I liked implying that maybe there's something large out there moving around that you cannot immediately see. So the player, let's talk a little bit about the movement. It's broken down into a couple different layers. My climbing for my ladders, I was really happy with. Very retro inspired. I like the kind of left-right feeling of that, as if you were climbing down a ladder with your feet. It's just two separate. I've got a -6, -12, and then a -3, -3 on two different pitch modulators. That's all that is. I do have one repeat here. I did that on purpose. When you grab the ladder, I move up. I did record this gameplay, so this is me playing. I move up like a pixel. You can see right there. And I figured, okay, so maybe the game, I'm moving up in engine, it starts playing the pattern that way. So that if I move back down, maybe it'll start playing the pattern where I was. I just thought it was a neat way to kind of communicate that. I think it's not too important, but I think it looks kind of nice since there's a single pixel of vertical movement there. The actual movement, let's go over that a little bit. This is super easy. This is just very standard square wave. I automated it up and then rendered it out, copied it over. It's the same wave every time. The grass, I was really happy with the grass. So every time that there's animated grass moving, there is a small grass sound effect. That the size of these, you see, I've got some of these clipped down basically to just hit less, imply a smaller movement. The only two big ones are those bushes that get hit. I have that one up top too with the hanging vines as well. And then that bush sounds a little bit different than the rest of the grass, as well as that bush and this bush. Play that again without talking over it. This is not, I think this just kind of gives a little bit of weight to your player, coupled with this, which is my other landing track. This is kind of it's a combination of a footstep. It's a set of footsteps. I think it's 4 that I repeated. And then the other noise is just kind of like a dull thud, like an impact. And that one is the same every time. In the game, it's never really confirmed what you're playing as. This animal, this blob thing, people call him the blob. People call him, I'm blanking on the name. But people call him just little guy, whatever. But it's not really confirmed what type of animal he is. So what I wanted to sell was about the weight of like a cat, essentially. And so I kind of liked the impact of that. Doesn't make it seem like you weigh too much. And then coupled with the grass, I thought that was just a nice balance of implied weight for the player character. The movement, by the way, I usually do this in terms of redesign with linear media following something moving around a screen. The first thing I did when I set up this section was I followed the player around with a pan. So this is all automated to my master folder, so you can see everything's coming through there. The easiest way to do that is literally just with your eyes follow it and be like, okay, right about here is when he starts moving inward. Right there, you can see it slows down and it stops right here when he's on the ladder. So that's a very, very minor change to the center, and then you travel across here, and then over here when you're climbing the ladder, it's much greater panned to the right. But that way you are prevented from having to go through track by track and say, oh, well, these jumps are coming from here. Because everything is following the player, it's just a lot easier to have it ever so slightly pan around the room with you. Very nice little quality of life thing. I definitely did not come up with that either. But I like that follows. The only thing that I would say is if I were to go back and do this redesign again, I'd probably pull the grass out of this completely, because when you hear the grass, it'll come from that location, but it would stop panning. It wouldn't follow with you. So if you would hit the bush here, the bush sound would stay coming from the bush. Now these aren't really long enough for that to actually matter. And it doesn't, like, to my ear, I don't notice them moving along with the player, but they do. By nature of being in this track stack. And if I were to do this redesign again, I would probably pull those out and have them separate. And I would trigger them from the pan location, but I would have them stay where they are in the pan without moving. Let's talk about the lantern. I really like the lantern. The lantern is my favorite sound in this. A couple different things going on. I liked implying that it was glass. So that's these two sounds right here. Wine glass impact. There's one that I've got the second half of it tucked in a little bit. The reason for that is I like to imagining maybe it's like a metal cage with a glass lamp or something inside of it like this. And that when you hit it, it's loose, so it kind of knocks against it. And then these two chain movement sounds, just general chain, and then I've got them coming out on a very, coming down on a very linear fade. This one was actually perfect. I was all worried about retiming this, but this little impact you see right here lines up perfectly with the swing back left. Sorry if my render engine, 1 second. There we go. So I really was happy with how that kind of added the physicality of that and the movement of it in the world. was really happy with that sound. These are all also individually run through reverbs. I think that kind of adds a little bit of a dreamlike thing to this, because instead of one static reverb, things kind of act and sound different. That was done on purpose. I did choose to do that. In the game, I noticed that there are several things that seem to react to sound differently, especially after direct player interaction, like jumping into this lantern. And so I thought it was an interesting choice for Billy Basso, the sole developer of this, to not have a consistent reverb value per room. I thought that was interesting. The other thing I've got in its own reverb as well is I've got Hall for soft pads and keys. These drips, I've got these little drips, very small. These are all timed to, you see these little white droplets coming down from the ceiling. I don't know if these are animated directly or like procedurally placed in the world. I just liked the idea of having a very thin point focus of like, this doesn't stick out in the mix really at all when you're listening. Like, it very much so, to my ear, blends kind of into the rest of the wet ambience of the room. But if you were to look at the drip itself, if you're to follow it with your eyes, I noticed it would have a sound associated with it. So I really liked the point focus of that and giving people the option to notice that or not. Basically, it doesn't really add anything gameplay wise, but it just kind of feels a little bit, makes it feel a bit more real, because, you know, if the world was propped up by real physics, those water droplets would make a sound. But we spent all this time talking about the first room, so let's mention the second room now. This feels a little bit wilder to me, just to my eye. There's more greenery, there's more shrub and brush, and there's that weird snake-looking statue thing up there that you don't know what is yet. So for this one, all of these well ambiences are the same. They are consistent throughout, because I like to imagine that that's the greater world. But these actually completely change room tone. There is a fade on them, but I literally just, it is about as small as I could get it without noticing it. Especially piping through the reverb I have here for the ambient, which is Soundly Place It, 60% Cave. Absolutely highly recommend Soundly Place It, totally free plugin. Some of the best like spatialization, so good for it to being free. And then I've got another EQ on top of that, just kind of fully pulling out some of that lower rumble. I have individual EQs on these pulling out more too, because some of these sounded a little bit too sinister, I think the word is. I wasn't really interested in scaring the player, as in like making them feel like this world is scary, but rather just big. And I didn't think you needed all of that rumble to sell the size of the world that you're moving around in. Anyway, this room has a little bit more wild sound to my ear. So I've got this track, which is Birdsong. These are kind of panned around. I didn't want to have them overlap too much, because I didn't want to have too much going on to kind of overwhelm you entering the next room. But I did like the transition being a single frame, having this snap from room to room. There was an initial cut of this redesign where I had the reverb pull straight out. Did I already say that? I don't remember. I've recorded 3 of these in a row because I keep making mistakes. And I don't know if I already said that or not. But there was an original cut of this room where I pulled the reverb out and had it snap to the other room. But I really like the choice made by Billy Basso to kind of have the previous room persist as if it was a physical thing that you just left. You would normally be able to still hear it a little bit if you just climbed a ladder and went out of it. So doing that, yeah, I've got some other water that's panned around here. I've got some more birds. All stuff that just triggers as soon as you enter this. There's this yellow marker here. And then our whale friend comes back. Tuned it down again. And I just thought it was neat to kind of imply that there was something larger out there than you. Maybe that you should be worried or scared about in the future. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This isn't a too complicated one. There's not too much going on. I just really enjoyed the ambience building of this. I thought that was really neat. And I like having the larger, consistent sound of the well, coupled right next to the kind of not thinner, but the more individualized room ambiances and room tones. So yeah, that's my Inwell Raw redesign. 15 minutes talking about 20 seconds of audio. But yeah, if you would like to see more of these, please let me know. I've got a couple more that I'm really excited about that I really enjoyed making. And yeah, this was my favorite, probably one of my favorite ones, if not my favorite one. So yeah, thank you for your time. Goodbye.